Hello, my name is Carrie. Welcome to Wearables and Shareables. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to use Tunisian crochet to make yourself a super cute and fun project bag. I did take some inspiration for this bag from Tony Lipsy over at TL Yarn Crafts. I used some of the structuring that she used in her Kensington tote bag or her Tunisian tote bag for beginners, as the video is titled. So definitely go check out Tony. She's got some really great information on Tunisian crochet if you're a beginner, and of course she shows some more advanced techniques if you're really interested in Tunisian crochet. You can also pick up her book. It's called the Tunisian Crochet Handbook, A Beginner's Guide, and this will be a great resource for you as you get started working in Tunisian crochet. So let's jump over and see what our pattern is going to look like when we're finished. This is the chart that we'll be referencing throughout working the pattern. The bag is constructed by first working one side and adding a handle, and then we turn the bag over, pick up stitches, and repeat the directions from the first side to complete the second side. So this chart is going to kind of be our lifeline as we complete our work in the pattern. As with most crochet or knit charts, we're actually going to start in the lower right hand corner where my little finger is pointing there. We're going to work from right to left because that's the direction that we work stitches in Tunisian crochet, and we're going to work from the bottom to the top. And we'll learn some more advanced techniques as we progress up the mountain. I did design this pattern with total beginners in mind, and I hope that this video and the written directions for the pattern will support you as you work your way through this project. So let's take a look at the key for the pattern so that we can understand the symbols that I've used in the chart here. So first you can see these little vertical lines are going to be for our foundation chain. And of course I'll show you how to do all of these steps as we progress through the pattern. Next, you can see that I've used a little V here to signify that it's the last stitch in the row. We use a little different technique on the last stitch just to give ourselves a nice salvage edge. We'll be learning the Tunisian purl stitch, the Tunisian knit stitch, and we'll be learning how to change colors on both the return pass and forward pass in Tunisian crochet. And don't worry if you're a total beginner, I'll help you through all the steps as we go. So I apologize that this video might be a little bit long, but you can of course use the chapter function in YouTube to skip to where you're most interested in. So let's go ahead and get started by talking about the things that you'll need to complete this project. First, you'll need a Tunisian crochet hook. My Tunisian crochet hook, I believe, is about 14 inches long, which is why it's a little tough to fit in the picture here. I'm going to be using a size 7mm hook, and unfortunately the lighting is making that a little bit hard for you to see, but trust me on that, it's a 7mm hook. You'll also need a pair of scissors to cut your yarn before you weave in your ends. You'll need a darning needle for weaving in ends, and you may consider using some kind of row counting device to help you keep track of where you are in the pattern. But of course the most exciting part of any kind of knit, crochet, or Tunisian crochet project is the yarn. So let's talk about the ones that I've chosen for this project. I'm going to be using Juniper Moon Farm, their Cumulus brand of yarn. This is 94% cotton and 6% nylon. It's got a really great drape and it's super squishy and soft. It really does feel like you're working with a cloud. This particular purple color that we'll be using for the majority of our work is called Lily Lollipop, and I really love this color. Next, we have also from Juniper Moon Farm, their Cumulus brand. This white color is called White Lion, and we're going to be using that for the clouds and some snow in our project. And finally, we have this Toucan Bay Blue. This, of course, will be our sky color. So here's our color palette. These are all medium or worsted weight yarns. I believe they're category 4. So they should match perfectly with our Tunisian crochet hook here. And if you can't access these yarns or you want to go with something a little different, maybe you like working with a wool instead of a cotton, of course you can trade this yarn out for anything that you like as long as you keep the sizing fairly similar. Now you can make the bag larger by using a bulky or chunky weight yarn, or smaller by using a lighter weight yarn, but if you do that, be sure to match the size of your Tunisian crochet hook to something that will be appropriate for the yarn that you choose. So I think that's enough introduction for now. Let's go ahead and get started with our project. If we reference back to our chart here, you can see that the first color we're going to be using is our purple. That's that Lily Lollipop color. And I can see across the entire first row that I just need to build my foundation chain. So in order to get started with that, we need to first make ourselves a slip knot to put on our Tunisian crochet hook. Now there are a lot of videos on YouTube about how to make a slip knot. I'll quickly show you the way that I like to do it, but of course you can use any way that works for you. I like to just take a little section of yarn. This is maybe 6 or 8 inches long. I make myself a little ring and be sure to cross it over in at least one space. That's here. I take this little tail from behind, tuck it up under into my ring, and pull that through. And of course, you can make a large slip knot and slip it down, but you don't want to make your slip knot too tight. We want our beginning or starting chain for this Tunisian crochet project to be kind of loose. That's going to make it easier for us to work into our stitches later. There we go. So I can slip this onto my hook. And for this particular pattern, we're going to be chaining 35. It's pretty important that you maintain 35 stitches throughout the project until you start the addition of the handle. So let's go ahead and chain our 35. I'm just going to unroll some of my yarn here so that I have enough to work with. And when I tension my yarn, I typically wrap it around my ring finger, tuck my index finger under there, and I hold it something like this. So I can just chain like I would for a regular crochet project. I'm just going to be yarning over and pulling through loops. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, I got my little thing out of the package, 16, let me unroll some more yarn here. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35. Now, if you're unsure that you got your 35 chains, you can count the little V's to make sure that you have 35 of them hanging off of your Tunisian crochet hook. In most Tunisian crochet patterns, you'll find that they ask you to insert your hook in the back bumps of your chain. But for this pattern, we're actually going to be using the back loop only. So if I face my chain towards myself with the little V's facing me, this top chain here is called the back loop. And we're going to be working into the back loop only across the length of our chain, because when we're ready to do the second side of our bag, we'll come back and we'll find the front loop of this chain. So in the second chain from the hook, this first little V here, that is the first chain. In the second chain from the hook, we're going to be pulling up a loop of yarn. So to do that, I need to turn my chain so that it's facing me. I'm going to insert my hook into that back loop only. I'll yarn over and pull up a loop. Now I have 2 loops on my hook. This differs from traditional crochet because we're not going to be yarning over again and completing that stitch. Instead, we're just going to collect the stitches on our Tunisian crochet hook. So I'll find the next back loop only, yarn over, and pull up a loop, and work my way down the line. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull up a loop. Take your time doing this and make sure that when you're finished you have 35 loops on your hook. Go ahead and pause the video here so that you can do your chain and pull up your 35 loops, and I'll meet you back here in a minute. Okay, I'm to the point where I have 34 loops on my Tunisian crochet hook, and I'm going to go ahead and insert into this last stitch, still in the back loop only. Now for the rest of the pattern, we're going to be doing something special with that last stitch, but for this first row, we just need to do the foundation chain with the back loop only. Now that I have all 35 of my loops pulled up, I've completed the forward pass for row number 1. Now in order to complete this row, I need to also do a return pass where I work the loops off of my Tunisian crochet hook. So to do that, I'm going to first want to chain 1. And all I need to do here is yarn over and pull through 1 loop. Then I can yarn over and pull through 2 loops to complete those stitches. I like to count backwards when I'm working my loops off of my hook in my Tunisian crochet because that helps me keep track of the stitch numbers when I reference my chart later. So that was stitch number 35 and 34. If I yarn over and pull through 2, that will be stitch number 33. Yarn over, pull through 2, stitch number 32. Now you're going to continue yarning over and pulling through 2 until you only have 1 loop remaining on your hook. So go ahead and complete the return pass on row number 1, and I'll meet you back in just a second. Okay, now I've completed my return pass for row 1, and this is a good time to talk about the structure of our foundation chain. So if we take a close look here, we can see that we have some horizontal bars at the top and at the bottom, and we also have some vertical bars running from the top to the bottom of each stitch. You can kind of think of each stitch like a little box. So I've drawn just a little outline here. This will represent the top of our stitch, and this will represent the bottom of our stitch. Now if we take our stitches and sort of pull them apart, you can see that there are actually 2 vertical bars in each stitch. So let's go ahead and draw those here. The stitch kind of works like this. This first vertical bar should be behind the other one. So this is called the back vertical bar. And on this side, if you look closely at your stitches, this one lays a little bit in front of the other one. And this one is called your front vertical bar. Okay, so if we take a look closely at our stitches again, I'll help you identify where those front and back vertical bars are. So if I pull this stitch apart here, you can see this is the front vertical bar, and right behind there is the back vertical bar. And because we're going to be working in Tunisian Knit Stitch for this project, it's very important that we be able to identify where the front and back vertical bars are in our foundation chain, because we're going to be inserting our hook through those front and back vertical bars when we complete our Tunisian Knit Stitch. So let's go over and reference our chart again to see what we need to do on row number 2. I'm going to zoom this in just a little bit so that you can see more clearly. Here we are on row number 2. I need to use my purple color until I get to stitch number 12. And then I've got my white color, but I have some interesting little characters in there. So if I reference back to my key, I can see that this means that I'm going to be changing colors on the return pass. So I need to continue using my current color, in this case purple, and then when we do our return pass, that's when we'll switch to white. Now the reason I've written this project this way is that completing the color change on the return pass is going to help us carry that color up to the next row where we'll be able to use it on our forward pass. And sometimes it just gives the work a little bit more natural look when we're trying to make things like snow on our mountains. So let's go back to our project here. And I need to make one more important note about how to work your Tunisian knit stitches. This first set of vertical bars here already has a loop pulled up onto the hook. So this is always going to count as stitch number 1, which means that we're always going to skip stitch number 1. So if I refer back to my chart, I don't need to do anything for this box on row 2 for stitch number 1, because I already have a loop pulled up on my hook for that stitch. So I'm going to skip this first set of vertical bars, and then I'm going to be inserting my Tunisian crochet hook in between the front and back vertical bars of the second stitch in my foundation chain. So if I get my little quick drawing back out here, I'm going to be inserting my hook through here, all the way from the front to the back of the stitch, okay? And this will get easier as you work more in Tunisian crochet. You'll be able to identify the parts of the stitch and where they are more easily. And in my written pattern, I have included some illustrations of where exactly you need to insert your hook. So again, between the front and back vertical bars, I'll insert my hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And just like when we worked our foundation chain, I'm going to just collect those loops on my hook, and it's important that I maintain those 35 loops. So if you only have 34, go back and check where you may have missed a stitch. So I've got 2 here, This is stitch number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now again, if I reference my chart, I can see that I'm going to be changing to white, but not until I get to the return pass, okay? So I don't need to do anything with that right now. I'm just going to continue using my purple color all the way to the end of the row. So let's continue working in our purple color. That was 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, I inserted my hook there, but I missed my yarn over. 33, 34, and then I need to reference my chart again because I remember that there's something funny happening at the end here. If I go to the very last stitch on each row, I'm going to insert my hook under both loops of the edge stitch. So instead of inserting through the front and back vertical bars like we have been, we need to identify where the 2 loops at the end of our row are. So we can slightly turn this work towards us. I just use my left hand when I do that, or because I'm right-handed. So I do the work mostly with my right hand, but I can just use my left hand here to turn the end of my work towards me, and I can see that there are 2 loops here. I'm going to insert my hook under those 2 loops, yarn over, and pull up my loop. And that is going to give me a nice selvage or edge to my project. Okay, we're going to work the return pass in the standard way for Tunisian knit until we get to those stitches that we need to change the color. So if we reference back to our chart, we need to change the color at stitch number 16. The stitches on our hook here are going to maintain their number. So counting backwards will help us when we complete this return pass. Remember, on our return pass, we're always going to chain 1 first. That helps us move up to the next row in our work. So chain 1, that's stitch number 35. Pull through 2, that's stitch number 34. Pull through 2, that's stitch number 33. Pull through 2, that's 32, 31, 30, 29, 28, 27, 26, 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17. Okay, we've just completed stitch number 17 on our return pass. So when we go to complete stitch number 16, this is where we're going to be changing colors in order to move that white from row number 2 up to row number 3, where we're going to be picking up the color on our forward pass. So I need to get some white ready here. I'm going to be using both the center pole and the outside pull of my yarn eventually, but for right now you can just choose whichever one you like. I'm just going to grab a tail here, and I'm going to position it so that when I yarn over, I'm going to be grabbing this white color instead of my purple color. Now I don't need to cut this purple. We're going to continue using it after we do these 4 stitches with our white color. So you can just leave that purple laying there, and you want to leave yourself a nice tail so that you'll be able to weave in the ends later. So maybe 3 or 4 inches or whatever you feel comfortable with. And then I sort of just take it and loop it over my finger. It needs to have just a little bit of tension on there so that when I place it onto my hook, I'll be able to pull it through my 2 stitches. So this is going to be stitch number 16. And then I can go ahead and grab my working yarn, not the tail of this white, because we're going to need it to weave in our ends later. And right now we need to use our working yarn. So that was stitch number 16. Counting backwards, stitch number 15, 14, and 13. So if I reference my chart one more time, I've done these white stitches on my return pass, and now it's time to switch back to purple on stitch number 12. So to do that, I'm just going to drop my white where it is. I'm going to pick up my purple, and I'm going to float it over the wrong side or the back side of my work, so you won't be able to see that float in the front. It'll be all across the back. Now I've only changed colors for 4 stitches here, and that's okay for this float. We don't want our floats to go from one side of the project all the way to the other, but 4 or 5 stitches should be just fine. Now to do this, I'm just going to pick up my purple color again, and I'm going to want it to be pretty loose. I don't want to create a tight spot here by making this yarn over too tight. So I can just take my yarn and gently pull it over until I can pull it through these 2 loops. That's stitch number 12. I'm going to continue working in purple until I get all the way back to only having 1 loop on my hook. So if I count backwards again, this is 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, and you may need to do some yarn management here. Your white and your purple might start to tangle up. Just go ahead and try to straighten them. This project can be a little bit messy, so let me give you some tips on what you might do instead of having 2 full yarn balls or cupcakes, whatever you like to call them, as you're working. You might just take a little piece of cardboard, maybe a 3x5 card, something like that, and you can wrap several yards of yarn around your little card or whatever you choose to use, and use it kind of like you would if you were doing knitting in intarsia style, where you switch colors to do particular stitches. So that's one option. Or you could, of course, just divide your little yarn cupcakes or balls into smaller ones so that you don't have as much yarn in the way as you're working. But I just like to leave mine hanging there. I don't mind a little bit of tangling. I just try to keep things as straight as I can. So now I have completed both the forward and return pass for row number 2. So I'm just about ready to start row number 3. And you can see there that I set my work down, and I want to be able to pick it back up and know where it is that I need to start. So we need to identify what is the front or right side of our work and what is the wrong or back side of our work. And in this particular project, it's pretty easy because those floats are always going to be on the back side. So when I turn my work here and position my yarn in the correct way, I'm going to have the front side or the right side facing me. Now, because we're doing the Tunisian knit stitch, our project is going to have a tendency to curl up at the bottom. That's okay, because when we take our work, we're going to be completing the first side, something like this. And then we're going to flip it upside down, and then we're going to be adding stitches from the bottom down, so that's going to provide some tension to keep our project from rolling too much. So don't worry about it right now. You can kind of just tug it down to keep it in position. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with row number 3. So one more time, let's go ahead and reference our chart. In row number 3, it looks like we need to change colors right here at stitch number 12 again. But there's no symbols in my little white boxes here, so that just means that on our forward and return pass, we're going to be using white as our color. And if you reference the written pattern for this, it will tell you all about those little details there. So let's jump back over to our work. And I'm just going to continue my Tunisian knit stitch for 12 total stitches, remembering that this first stitch is always counted as stitch number 1. So inserting between my front and back vertical bars, here's stitch number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, get some more yarn, number 7, number 8. Here's that rolling I was talking about. I'm just taking my thumbs and kind of stretching it out some. Number 9, number 10, number 11, and here I am on number 12. So it's going to be the stitch right before where I can start to see the white that we added on our return pass. So let's bring in close here. You can see I have sort of this elongated stitch here at the top. That's just because I haven't woven in my end from where I added the white. So if I just give a little gentle tug on my white here, it's going to make that stitch a little more normal size. But really don't worry too much about it. All of the crissing and crossing of our yarns is going to help make everything a consistent tension before we're finished. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and pick up my white color. I have it right here from where I completed that return pass with it. That's why I have in the pattern to do things just on the return pass only, because then when we go to do our forward pass, it's going to be ready for us to pick up again. So I've just dropped my purple down behind my work on the wrong side and picked up my white so that I can yarn over and pull up that loop. So I'll insert my hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop for stitch number 13, stitch number 14. I'm stretching out that little roll here so that I can find where to insert my hook, stitch number 15. So I'm just going to make myself a little loop here. I'm going to kind of position it behind my work so that when I insert my hook into stitch number 28, I'll be able to drop that loop on the hook, give it a little bit of tension, and here I've completed number 28. I'll drop my tail from that white yarn, and then I'll do stitch number 29. Okay, so there's stitch number 29. And then if I go back to my chart, I can see that I need to complete the rest of the row from stitch number 29 through 34 in purple, and then I'll do my little special technique for the end stitch there. So let's go ahead and do that. So this will be stitch number 30, 31, 32, 33. Oops, I missed 34, and then I'm going to turn the work towards me and find those two little loops at the end so I can insert my hook under those, and then I'll be ready to complete my return pass for row number 3. Now when you get to the correct stitch numbers for changing to your white color, you're just going to pick up that white yarn, do those 2 stitches, and again over here you'll pick up your white yarn and do these 3 stitches. Okay, so go ahead and complete your return pass, and I think let's go ahead and make another video to explain the rest of the pattern. So thank you so much for watching. Please leave your comments down below with any questions that you might have, and I hope you really enjoy this pattern as much as I have. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.